Welcome. This is our, yes, thank you for being here. This is our second to last Fredi, Schiff, Levin event of the season. My name is Ruby T. I am the curator of museum education here at PAM. Welcome to the Fredi, Schiff, Levin lecture series, which is graciously sponsored by the Levin family. Now in its 22nd season, the lecture series honors Fredi, Schiff, Levin's legacy as a member of the Provincetown arts community by inviting artists, curators, authors, and scholars to speak at PAM. We are grateful to the Levin family for their continued support of this annual program. And thank you again for joining us tonight. We are thrilled to be welcoming Susan B. And Susan B. has had 10 solo shows at AIR Gallery in New York City. She has published 18 artist books, including collaborations with poets. B's artwork and artist books are in many public and private collections. Her work has been widely reviewed. B was the co-editor of Meaning with Mira Shore from 1986 to 2016. She has a BA from Barnard College and an MA in art from Hunter College. She received a Guggenheim Fellowship in Fine Arts in 2014 and has had fellowships from Yaddo, MacDowell, and VCCA. She lives in Brooklyn, New York. And before I give a final welcome to Susan, I just want to plug this incredible, beautiful catalog, which is available in our bookstore. So please don't miss out on this. And without further ado, welcome Susan B.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Mira's telling me to smile, so I'm going to work on that. It's good to have all my closest friends in the front row. So first of all, I'm really honored and delighted to have this opportunity to show these particular works at PAM. And I want to thank Johanna Drucker, my collaborator and curator, for organizing the show and writing the catalog essay, and Christine McCarthy and the staff of PAM for hosting the show, and also to Ruby T for arranging the talk. And I'm starting with the earliest painting in the show, but I've been coming to Provincetown since childhood. My parents were both artists, Miriam and Zygmunt Laufer, and they loved coming to Provincetown from Manhattan. So I've been coming here a really long time, and my mother's retrospective was at PAM in 2016 and was organized by Johanna and me. And there's a catalog for that show in the bookstore. And Johanna has arranged this show thematically rather than chronologically. So her 8 categories, I'm going to read them because they aren't categories I had realized I was actually doing when I'm doing them. But it was history, children and family, self-portraits, feminist pop collage, conflict and drama, metaphors, scenescapes, and the apocalypse. So it ends with the apocalypse. So the show starts with this painting called To the Lighthouse One, which I did in 1981. And I had been doing a lot of artwork before. I did this painting in graduate school at Hunter. I did a lot of abstract paintings and photograms in the 1970s when I studied with minimalists, and you can see they had a very strong effect. But in 1981, after my mother died, I felt the need to return to figuration, and she did a lot of figuration, so I think it came back to me, and also to oil painting. So this painting is named after Virginia Woolf's novel, which is about the death of a mother of a family. And it also, at the end of the book, it features a woman painter having her own vision. And you can see it next door. Okay, this painting is Marsden Hartley meets Wonder Woman. And it just brings me back to the Trump-Kamala Harris thing the other night. Well, it was painted in homage to one of my favorite painters, who might have had trouble with a woman on his side that way. And so it's somewhat satiric and humorous, but I really do love Marsden Hartley. So there's that aspect of it. And he looks a little upset with her. And this one is from 1983, and actually I've never shown it before in public. So I'm really happy to see it again. It's owned by somebody local here. So during the same period, I painted Framing the Rosenbergs, an ambiguous look at the notorious case, which involved a radical Jewish couple who were convicted of passing atomic secrets to the Russians and condemned to death. And I was struck by this photo of them before their execution. And I wanted to contrast this photo with their colorful framing. So the painting is deliberately ambiguous, with the realism of the news photo contrasting with my painting style, sort of referring to the 50s. And also sort of the cheeriness of the 50s. And interestingly, there was just something in the news like in the last 2 days that it turns out that Ethel Rosenberg had nothing to do with, she was not a spy, but she was killed also. So anyway, I don't want to delve into the case because that could be a whole nother lecture, and I'm not a historian of the period, but I felt this was a really important thing to address. And I do think in terms of my history paintings that there's certain things I just feel I have to address if I can. And this was one of those instances. And also this painting has never been shown before, and there are reasons for that. So this one's called Doomed to Win, 1983, and it features a female boxer who's afraid to enter the ring. So the painting was based on a movie still. I was looking for images of boxers, women boxers. I also took up boxing for a bit, and or more in the karate, actually. But so the film was from 1931, and it's a film about a male boxer, and I changed the lead figure into what is really a self-portrait. And I like the way the two men are on her side, supporting her and kind of pointing into the ring, you know, so it has that feeling of something pointing out. And the title, Doomed to Win, strangely is the title of the film that I took the still from. And I thought it was a great title for a painting. Okay. I have to explain myself here. So this is, I painted in the same time period it was 1983, I was 31, and I painted myself as Portrait of the Artist as a Young Pig, which is pretty satirical. But I'm being scolded by Petunia Pig and urged to paint. And she was my little, I joke that she was my spirit animal. So, you know, because everybody has a spirit animal, so mine must be a pig. But anyway, I like to be able to make these sort of feminist and political paintings, but I also like to have a sense of humor about what I'm doing, and this was kind of during a very heavy feminist period coming out of that, and I really wanted to have something that was playful but painterly and also addressed certain issues about how a woman really needs to get to painting, you know, especially since my mother was a painter and coming from a line of women painters, what that meant. So I'm glad to see the painting up after like 40 years. This one is Ahava, Berlin from 2012. And this is a painting, also an autobiographical painting. I'm standing, that's me in the picture, standing in front of the children's home, which my mother grew up in Berlin. And it was in the Jewish part of Berlin. And it's a very heavily scarred, dilapidated, graffitied building. And my husband took the picture. And when I got back with the photo, I thought, well, I think I need to make a painting out of this. But it was really about the building, and it was about the history of my mother in Berlin. So she lived there from 1927 to 1934 before she went with the group to Palestine. And it's a very complicated history, and it's hard for me to address it, actually. So this painting was my attempt to kind of deal with the layers of history that particular building represents. And also the name of the children's home was Ahava, which is the Hebrew word for love. So that was also an important part of the painting. And there's a plaque on the building. And then I've also been doing a lot of paintings based on film stills. And this one's called Pickpocket, and it's based on a black and white film still from a Robert Bresson film, Pickpocket, where the girlfriend of the pickpocket visits him in jail. And I was really interested in sort of abstracting from the grid. So it's sort of an abstraction, but I was also interested in the relationship between the two figures that are separated by the jail grid. And a lot of times I've been taking black and white stills and converting them, so to speak, into color. And that really changes the meaning of the image to me. So this is when I was thinking of Kamala, because I've been seeing all these pictures of her knocking out Trump. You know, I don't know, all these memes that are going around. And I thought, yes, because I was really looking for a while for photos of women knocking out men. And they aren't that easy to find, actually. Now they would, now they would be probably, because I just saw a whole bunch of them today in Facebook. But so this one is from 2014, and what interested me was partially that it's partially the image, and it's also like the idea of the two colors, her being dressed in green, him being dressed in blue, and the backdrop, and they're all fighting with each other. The backdrop's fighting with the figures, and I thought it was really interesting, her expression on her face, like she's just looking, yeah, I'm going to do that. That's what reminded me of the debate, actually. This one, the slap, also continues with the theme of male-female relationships. And it's based on a film still from Too Late Blues, an early black and white film by John Cassavetes. And he's one of my favorites for like film stills, for films, you know, but also for films about relationships between men and women. And the thing that I really enjoyed doing in this painting was painting these, as it was black and white, making this guy's suit. So they're two separate sort of abstract paintings in the painting, which is his suit and her dress, which became these two fields that were in conflict. And then the black background, I think, emphasizes the nature of their conflict. So then, going backwards, as it is in the other room in the show, in 1985, my daughter, Emma B. Bernstein, was born, and I started to use a lot of her little decals and, toys and collages with a little Raggedy Anns, and I hope to just disrupt the purity of the surface. And these are pretty small paintings. There are 4 of them in the other room. And I had my first solo show in 1992 at Virginia Lusk Gallery. And that was the year my second child, Felix, was born. And I showed these paintings there. And it really it relates to their childhood and how their childhood toys evoked my childhood in some way. So they're also very playful. I think it was a kind of fun show. And you can see them in the other room because there were little things that I would find, little plastic flowers that I would glue onto the canvas, and mushrooms, and I guess I was thinking of Felix with this swan's way. The swan is the swan from Swan's Way. So that was, and I was using a lot of decals and sort of found objects. And this one is called Spider's Web. And you see what I felt it was a very playful thing to put the little feather on the swan and the decal of the spider and the mushrooms and put the little giraffe's head. It was a funny period because when I look at my later work, I don't know if I could still do this particular kind of work, although maybe in the books I do a lot of collage. So, but I feel like this was a particular time when I felt that I wanted to do this particular type of work. And this is another one from that time period, 1990, stormy weather. And it's another decal. And it really brings to mind Provincetown, actually. I was always looking out at ships. It's very funny because in this article that came out in The Independent about me, it said that I was a failed sailor, which is true. I mean, I took sailing lessons here in the West End Racing Club, and I was really terrible at it, and they just used me to ballast the boat, And I would always sink every boat. So it was, I just gave up sailing, but I kept putting them in the paintings. Because I can keep everything afloat in the painting, but I can't, in real life, I can't keep anything afloat. And also I get seasick, so this is as close as I got to sailing. But I thought it was funny that she mentioned it. Because sailing is just, I keep using sailboats in my paintings, but what does it mean? I don't know. Like this one, which is on the cover of the catalog. And actually is the title painting of the show from 2007. And this is a rare painting I based on a dream. A huge eye was kind of in its place, and there was a lone female figure who looks forward from the prow of the boat. So it's sort of a threatening thing, but also met by calm. And I actually can quote from Johanna's essay, the themes of calm and turbulence set up a tension between optimistic determination and the constant struggle to preserve some equilibrium within the course of life's upheavals and events. That's a mouthful, which probably I wouldn't say, but maybe I said it in the painting, So that's why you need the catalog essay. Which I think she wrote a beautiful essay, and I'm very happy with it. And as to the painting, I no longer remember the dream. But I do know there was a dream involved. And I use the eye a lot, and that's sort of a Kabbalistic thing. In the Kabbalah, they have often the eye representing God. Although I wouldn't say it's a religious painting, but there it is. This one is Wanderer in a Sea of Fog from 2008. And so I have a great love for the German Romantic painter Caspar David Friedrich. And he did this painting of a man looking over this landscape. And he's very famous for his Rückenfigur, which is figures seen from the back. And so I was really interested in that aspect of German Romanticism. And so it's really an homage to his painting, which is called Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog. Mine is Wanderer in a Sea of Fog. But if you know the reference, his painting is from 1818. So this painting, The Flood, is the largest painting in the show. I started it in 1983, and I completed it many years later. And it's all about how the little figures get overwhelmed by the landscape, which is also an abstraction. So there's all these figures. And I actually, to paint this painting, I went to the library and looked, because it was before the internet. I went to the library and looked for pictures of floods and people in floods. And so even though it might look quite abstract in certain ways, I actually was looking at how people were writing on houses, on logs, on visions of people in a flood. And of course, I was also thinking of biblical floods. And now there's so much flooding in the world, so it seems to retain its relevance. So to skip over from 1983 to 1999, I painted this painting, Beware the Lady, which is a slogan from a pulp novel and film posters. And I sort of took a turn to more dangerous women and guns, and I really love these pulp fiction kind of images. And John Yao has a very good essay about this work, which I showed in 2000 at AIR in New York. And he talks about how the juxtapositions really work. But for me, a lot of it is actually about the composition and how to put the figures inside the very abstract composition. And it was very much constructed. Although I have to say I didn't start with a drawing or anything. I just sort of started the painting. It just kind of, it came together in pieces. So it almost feels very quilt-like to me, because I sort of pieced different collage elements together. And I did a number of paintings about this, and there's a certain amount of kitsch and sentimental images that I was probably taught I shouldn't use, like in this one. This one is also very tongue-in-cheek, I think. It's called Her Candle Burns Hot, in 1999. And actually, Her Candle Burns Hot is a slogan in the painting, and also Why Get Married. And there's another slogan in there, maybe I wrote it down. So I was using all these vintage paper dolls, vintage postcards. The ice cream and pie was very vintage. And then it was the black paint that pulled it all together for me. So partially it's about making these compositions, and partially it was about trying to get certain slogans and certain images into the painting that weren't necessarily what I started with. Like, I don't remember where it started. Maybe on the left, started with a figure on the left. They're really pieced together. This one's from the same year, Love is a Gentle Whip, and from 1999. I divided the composition to 3 rows, and I have a little Jackson Pollock area on the bottom, and then I like to read a lot of mysteries, so there's a mysterious woman on the top who's bleeding into the bottom, and then there's a sunflower. It has a lot of elements of sort of pulp fiction and also covers of different books, postcards. It's sort of an amalgam of different types of imagery, and then the sunflower is also a sort of in-joke to me, I think. I guess I was thinking of Van Gogh's sunflowers. How would Van Gogh handle this pulp fiction? So there were a lot of references, and I also was using a lot of pinups, vintage pinups from the 40s, which I was collecting at the time. Then in 2001, I took a slight turn to Americana, and this one's called Miss Dynamite from 2001. And there was a flag-waving girl, and also pilgrims, which is very good for Provincetown. You see the pilgrims? I feel I should have a pointer. There's pilgrims in this painting. And also a boy's happy book on the right corner, and also some vintage postcards and some slogans from 2 films. The 2 films are Miss Dynamite and Lady Be Good. And the woman who's in the left side with the purple is from the film Lady Be Good, and then I sort of turned her into a kind of dripping purple. I'll have to explain this all later. She drips down to the 2 people holding the gun in a sort of jellyfish. It was all rather stream of consciousness, I have to say, in a way. It wasn't all planned out, but I really wanted to do something that used all these elements and see how I could make it all work together. So that was what I hoped for. So from there, I'm leaping over to 2004, where I did a series of collaged paintings called Philosophical Trees. And this one's called Roots and Branches. And the trees, it was a show I had called Philosophical Trees in 2006, and it was all trees with collaged imagery. And I was looking at also the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life metaphors, diagrammic depictions, and surrealism, folk art. There's swimmers in this. There's a lot of stuff in this painting. It's very dense with imagery. On the far right, on the bottom, is Victoria and Albert. And there's masks, and there's superheroes, and there's soldiers and sailors. And I see they're sort of like a landscape that holds everything, you know? They're not landscapes that are really, I'm not really a landscape painter necessarily, but I love painting trees. But I'm interested in what a tree can hold and how the landscape can encompass a lot of imagery. So in a way, they kind of grow out of the other collage paintings that I showed with the little figures. But they kind of went into a slightly different direction. And this one is also from that series, Tree of Lost Dreams. And that's Jane Russell under the tree. And it turns out she's Belle Starr, the outlaw. I just happened to see the film from 1952. It's a really terrible film, but she's very compelling. And she leans against the roots of the tree, and then in the tree, there's all kinds of inset figures from the worlds of stickers, paper dolls, pin-ups, cutouts from Victorian illustrations, and also from 20th century popular magazines. And so it has a kind of melancholy title, but it's actually a somewhat cheery painting, I think. But that's up to the end viewer. And also I like the little creature underneath, the little boy who has a balloon. So now going towards the end of the show, in 2007 I painted this painting called Dark Pond. And there's two pinups in it, the woman in the tree and the woman next to the pond. And they're situated in a wintry landscape where there's a fox, a snake, ducks, and a bird, and an eye in the tree. And it really was about setting a kind of foreboding mood, because you don't know why these two pinups are out in the countryside. And I did sketch the pond in the countryside. So it is from a sketch that I did when I was upstate. But I was interested in the relationship between the two women and how they viewed each other across the pond. This one, Late Echo, is 2018, based on another painting by Caspar David Friedrich. And the title is from a late poem by John Ashbery, which I found particularly appropriate about doing late work, because I think I'm doing late work. I'm feeling pretty late myself. Anyway, but when I did this painting, I thought, well, yes, if John Ashbery is doing late work, maybe I'm doing late work. So he said, alone with our madness and favorite flower, we see that there's really nothing left to write about. Or rather, it is necessary to write about the same old things in the same way, repeating the same things over and over, for love to continue and be gradually different. So it's a wonderful poem. Yeah. So moving to the end is this one, which I was reminded by Debbie that I showed this one in Provincetown at her gallery. It's called Dark Matter from 2017, and it's based on a woodcut by Edvard Munch, in which two figures stand with their backs to us. Yeah, Munch, I love Munch. I like all the male painters, but Munch, Caspar David Friedrich, the more gloomy they are, the better for me. But anyway, I love these two figures, and they're staring. They're another Rücken figure, staring, and it's very enigma. It's an enigma as to what they're looking at. And I originally had painted in the whole landscape that's in the woodcut, and then I took it all out with the black bars. So it's all underneath there. And actually, you can kind of see that when you look at the painting. It's very thick. So I'm wondering what the two figures are looking into the future and seeing. And I call it Dark Matter. Then this cheery one is another self-portrait based on another of my favorite male artists, James Ensor. And it's based on his self-portrait from 20, and it's I sort of put myself in there at an earlier age. So I'm being surrounded by James Ensor's demons. And, but they're very cheery demons because they're very brightly colored and, you know, they're very friendly. You know, that's the way I experienced it. So I think my demons are friendlier than his are, and he looks more beset by them. because his thing is only in 3 colors, and I put a lot of colors into mine. So moving ahead, this is a more recent painting from my last show that was based on, it's called Apocalypse 3, but there's 4 paintings based on medieval manuscripts from the Morgan Library. And it's a world of faith and magic. And I like to make the monsters into kind of light images. And they're sort of wearing a little pajamas. Actually, the monsters are always having a better time than the poor people who are praying in the corner to be saved from the monsters. But I was feeling rather in an apocalyptic mood when I painted these paintings. But I also really love medieval manuscripts, and I think that the people at that time were very amazingly able to deal with the terrible things that were going on at that time, the Black Death and all of the wars. So I really have learned a lot by studying these manuscripts. And this is the most recent painting in the show. It's called Days of Awe, and it's also based on an apocalyptic tapestry from the 1400s. And I based it actually, I saw a postcard, so I based it on a postcard this big, and it turns out that somebody came to my studio and they said, but that's a giant tapestry. But I didn't really know because I've never seen it in person, but I really like the creatures that fall from the sky, the demons, and they kind of look like Maurice Sendak characters, so it has a bit of a fairy tale thing going on. Then this one, Treehouse, which is in the front room, is all taking from 2022. It's all, it all has symbols from all of the other paintings. So it's kind of my symbols all put together in one painting, and it's sort of an animated, magical, mystical landscape. So I felt this painting sort of summed up a lot of things that are in all the other paintings. There's the lighthouse, the sailboat with the one person, the bee, the eye, the nest. You can go, I mean, I could make a list of all the symbols, but you can see it yourself. So that's that, and I'm just going to show a few of what's in the cases, which is some of the books I've been doing. This one is from Tailspin from 1995, which I did for Granary Books. And then this is a page. It's actually not the page that's open in the case, but this is another page from the book, which I was very glad Steve Clay of Granary Books asked me which poet I wanted to work with. And I said, can I work by myself? And he said, yes. So I did this book by myself, but generally I do work with another person. But it was good to, you know, I really enjoyed working on this book. And it's all hand painted, the whole edition, which was like 45 books. I don't know, there's thousands of watercolors, basically. And then this one, Little Orphan Anagram, with poems by Charles Bernstein. And we've done 6 books together. This one is also from Granary, and it's in the case. And since I've been married to a poet, I've been very involved in making books and working as a designer and editor for commercial publications as well as poetry books. And of course, I designed language and meaning, which I'll talk about. And I've done a lot of book covers too. So this is one of the pages from the book, and it's our little creature, Little Orphan Anagram. And it says, Little Orphan Anagram, sitting in a tree, bruised by pride and abandoned by decree. And I had all these little sort of funny nursery rhymes that I set the type, and then I drew the drew the flower and I hand painted it, and it was a big job. So it was really fun to work on the 6 books that we've done together. Then going to meaning, because I'm sitting here with my collaborator, Mira Shore, and this is the book that we came out with a painting by Joan Snyder on the cover, and we worked on it from the magazine from 1986 to 2016. So I think it was a huge thing to do for 30 years. And we had 20 issues over the first 10 years, and then we had this book, and then we put together an online version. And all of the issues are also scanned and online. And it was really about, writing, politics, a place for feminist issues, but also published men and people of different genders, I guess we could say at this point. And I'm really, really happy that we had the opportunity to work together for 30 years. And it was a great project. And I can't really cover it in this brief amount of time. But so going to the next thing is also in the case, a book I did for Granary Books, which is called The Burning Babe and Other Poems by Jerome Rothenberg, and from 2005. And it's a full color setting of a series of poems taking off from images of babies in European Renaissance and medieval art. And I set all the type for the book, and this is one of the pages from the book, which you can see in the case. And the whole book's online. I did not hand color the entire edition because I couldn't do it again. So it's actually printed, but it's a beautiful printing, and I was really happy to be able to work with Jerry Rothenberg, who just died, and also he gave me all these poems, and I tried to set it so that there's something that relates in the imagery to each poem. So there's a flying horse, there's a baby with an apple, and there's a serpent in the poem, and every page of the book the imagery relates to the poem that I was given by Jerry. When I saw the manuscript, I was a little overwhelmed because it had a lot of really interesting imagery in it that I had to find and address. And so I'm going to end up with this one, Windswept. So I've been doing a lot of one-of-a-kind leporellos, which are also, people say, what's a leporello? It's an accordion book. And it started in 2012, and I've done about 30 of them. They're each unique, one-of-a-kind books. And this one I actually did during the pandemic, and I was sitting at a kitchen table, which is a place we rented on the bay in Provincetown. So that's the one I wanted to show because I did it over the summer, that summer of the pandemic, and it was very notable. I couldn't paint, but I could do this fold-out book, which is something like 60 or 80 inches long. So, so that's really all I want to talk about. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. That was fabulous. We have time for questions, and I will pass the mic to anyone who has a question, so please ask away. Great.
Susan, I know that you didn't want to say too much about Ahava because there's a complicated personal history, but that one particularly affected me, and I wonder if there's anything more you'd be willing to say about it, about the building itself, or...
Well, the building belongs to the Jewish community of Berlin, and it's still standing on Auguststrasse 12. I didn't realize the building was still there, although when I was 10, my parents and I went to Berlin. My father also grew up in Berlin. We went to visit East Berlin, which was really terrifying. We had to go over the border, and they wanted to see the places they grew up. And I was just terrified the whole time. It was really dark. They were all speaking German. And they grew up in the Mitte. Well, it's a really long story, frankly, but my father's family had a tailor shop in Alexanderplatz. So this whole area, it's like so fraught for me. The Alexanderplatz is gone, really, but that whole Mitte which was the Jewish part where my mother went to school, is now a gallery and a restaurant, a fancy restaurant. The whole thing just makes me feel queasy, honestly. And to see this building intact with a plaque on it, in 2012, long after my mother died and my father died, and it's really hard to say what I think about that whole history. Yes, Mira?
Is it used for something?
No, not at the moment. It's owned by the Jewish community of Berlin, whoever they are, and they have never really decided what to do with it, but it feels completely haunted. And people say they hear children's voices in it. And they're trying to build condos there, of course, what else? But I just saw it as a memorial, and it's a very haunted place. There's bullet holes in I don't think my painting does it justice at all as to what my experience of this trip was, but it's kind of amazing that it's still there, and I imagine the next time I go to Berlin, it'll be turned into condos or something, because I hope that answers the question.
Any more questions?
Any other questions? I couldn't have answered everything. Yes.
It would be an overall one. What is it like for you? Oh, sorry. What is it like for you to see all these works, especially the older work, which sometimes you haven't thought about that much or seen?
It's actually been a shock. When I walked in and I saw all this work, I was really shocked by it in a way, because I don't think I could paint a lot of those paintings again, especially like the pig one. I don't even know what I was thinking back then. I'm not that same person, and so looking back at some of those works, I'm startled by them, actually, and some of them have never been shown in public, so it's also the idea of people seeing this work for the first time, like the Framing the Rosenberg painting, which was rejected from a show about the Rosenbergs because they couldn't figure out what my attitude was. I've had a long track record of not getting this work shown, so I'm really, really grateful to have the opportunity to put it all together, and also to have the catalog so that I can sort of see it in chronological order. So it's been, I don't know how it's going to affect what I'm doing now, but I think it's been sort of a shock. Hopefully a good shock. Yes?
So I'm kind of fascinated by the interplay between the primitive or the naive and the sophisticated in your work. And the way I see it is the naive has kind of lessened over the years. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I always really,
dynamic?
I love folk art, and I love so-called primitive art and quilts, and all those things are really something that I've studied in terms of trying to bring that ethos into my work. And now I'm looking more at medieval work, which I interpret in my own way. I usually have some kind of source. So I guess that's an interesting point, that maybe it's lessened over time. And maybe I've tightened up my sources. But I always was using film stills. I was using a lot of material to make this work. It's really, sometimes they come out of drawings, and they don't come out of like a film still or a photo or somebody else's work. You know, sometimes it just comes to me. So, like that, The Eye of the Storm is not based on anything except my own, whatever I was dreaming about or thinking about. So, maybe it's, I mean, things change over 40 years, as you know. You're welcome. Oh, we have, oh, Brian, yes.
It's been a real treat to see your show. I have known your work, but not as deeply as I feel like I know it now. And to hear you talk about it and learn so much more about it and the imagery and the history of the imagery. And I just want to thank you so much for having the show here. Thanks to Joanna and it's just Johanna. And I think she did a brilliant job bringing all the paintings together in a really interesting kind of way. And thanks to
Yeah,
both
I
of
think
you.
so
Kudos.
too. I think I took a lot out of her. Oh, one more comment.
I agree, you and Johanna did a wonderful job bringing everything together. But one of the things that struck me strongly is that the different series are series, but your apocalypses are wildly open-ended. And since they're your most recent work, that open-endedness is truly optimistic, which in our times is rather unusual. And so bravo for that.
Well, I don't think the apocalypse is really a positive thing, but
They're optimistic.
well, they're cheery-looking apocalypses, it's true. I can't seem to bring myself to make them as dire as they should be. They keep coming out cheerier and going, oh no, that's the wrong color, it's bright orange. It should be like dark gray, and I should be like, you know. But somehow there's something about those medieval apocalypses that they also had that attitude. There's a kind of humor to it, which is surprising considering what they were dealing with, you know. Yeah, I had fun painting them. Yeah, I enjoyed painting the apocalypse. That's the whole thing. So, yeah, thanks.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, well, thank you so much, Susan. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Nice job.